Hey everybody, movie reviewer next door here, and I'm back with another review. This time I saw Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. This is not the DVD I watched, but I'm gonna explain that. This is a 2005 anime fantasy adventure action film, directed by Tetsuya Nomura and starring, since I watched the English dub, Steve Burton, Rachel Lee Cook, Mina Suvari, Steve Bloom, uh, and George Newbern. In this film, uh, continuing the storyline based on the hit PlayStation game Final Fantasy VII, 2 years have passed and the ruins of Midgar stand as a testament to the sacrifices made in order to bring peace. However, the world will soon face a new menace. A mysterious illness is spreading fast, old enemies are astir, and Cloud, who walked away from the life of a hero to live in solitude, must step forward yet again. So, what did I think of Final Fantasy VII Advent Children? Well, um, I enjoyed it to an extent, but this is one of those films that I think it's very dependent on how much you like the games. Because if you know the story of Final Fantasy VII, I feel like you're either gonna absolutely love this film a lot more or absolutely hate it a lot more. But as somebody who personally never finished Final Fantasy VII, I played like a little bit of it when I was younger, but didn't ever finish it. This film was fine. I enjoyed it to an extent. I'll get to that, but let me get to the cast. Um, Steve Burton plays Cloud Strife. I'm not really a fan of how he plays Cloud in this. Like, I don't remember in the games Cloud being this like emo twink, but that's really what he is here. He's very like, and I say twink specifically because he's like he he looks that way. Like they made him look that way instead of how he looked in the games, like when he was older. And I'm not a fan of the redesign. It feels like they're trying to make him like a cool character by making him like, oh, he doesn't want to show his emotions or whatever. But mostly it's just kind of annoying. And in Steve Burton plays Cloud in a lot of the games, specifically the Kingdom Heart games. But I'm I remember his voice acting in the games being a lot better than this because here he comes off very one dimensional, one note, every single line. And the only line that I can think of that was even memorable or the performance was memorable is the bit where he's like, Sephiroth, what do you want? Like says it like a petulant teenager rather than like a guy that's fighting this ultimate evil. He's like, Sephiroth, what do you want? Like it just seems so bad. Like I don't know if it was bad directing or what. Uh, Rachel Lee Cook plays Tifa Lockhart. I like Rachel Lee Cook as an actress in in like live action movies. I liked her in a film called Antitrust, even though she wasn't in it a ton. Um, but as Tifa, uh, her voice acting leaves a lot to be desired. Uh, Again, very one note. Uh, I mean, I'll give them this. They at least give Tifa something to do, but she's kind of like, eh. Mana Suvari plays Aerith. Um, she's only seen in like these visions because Aerith, the character, yeah. If you're watching this, you've probably seen played Final Fantasy anyway. So, uh, I don't think Mina Suvari does a bad job. She's not in the film a lot. She's in like 3 or 4 scenes. When Cloud's usually like in a kind of dream world state. I think she works for the character. She also plays the character in Kingdom Hearts 2, I think, maybe 3. Not 100% sure. Steve Bloom plays Vincent Valentine. This character barely does anything in the movie, but I love Steve Bloom as a voice actor. Um, Uh, and George Newbern as Sephiroth. I'm not huge on how Sephiroth is in this. Like Sephiroth is kind of like look how badass I am, and it just doesn't really have the like kind of menacing quality that he had in the game from what I remember. It just kind of weird, and I'd say that's the biggest one of the biggest issues I have with this film is the voice acting. The voice acting for the most part is pretty poor or substandard. It's pretty it kind of reminds me of the voice acting in The Spirits Within, where you had like known actors, Ming-Na Wen, Alec Baldwin, James Woods, I think was also in it. But because most of these people are just Hollywood actors or just live action actors, they've never voice acted before. Voice acting is a completely different thing, and you could argue it's even harder than live action acting because you don't have a real human to see as a reference for your voice. And the acting in that came off very flat. And that's kind of what you get here. And these are actual voice actors, so that's even weirder to me. Um, the the frickin' like, and the story in this film. Now, I don't remember this virus thing being a part of Final Fantasy VII, the game. I don't think it was. If it was, and somebody knows, please enlighten me in the comments. I am just watching. I watched this specifically because a friend wanted to watch it with me, and I hadn't seen anything with him in a while, and I was like, okay, whatever. Um, but the story here, from what I could gather, the story is Cloud's been out in hiding. Nobody knows where he is. It's 2 years after the first game, or after seven. I keep saying first game, and two of these kids get this like black plague type thing that they'll basically die if they don't get cured, and if anybody touches them, they can get the black plague thing. I forgot what it's called. And one of the kids gets like put into this truck with these other kids who get cured, but they also become like puppets for these bad guys. And that's like basically the extent of what happens in the first half. And I'll get to the pacing in a bit, but uh, uh, like not much happens in the first half, and that's about the biggest plot thing that happens. And yeah, you have the kid is like cured to an extent, I think, but he's also being used as a puppet because these guys, who are apparently Sephiroth's brothers, I guess, want to resurrect their mother, and that basically goes nowhere, by the way. Um, and they're using these kids to destroy the city, and apparently that like they're using these kids and then they're commanding these like dog things to go and rip people apart, and this giant like monster that I've never seen in my fucking life. It looked cool, but the yeah, all they're causing all this destruction in the city, and then they end up resurrecting Sephiroth basically out of nowhere. Sephiroth appears in this movie in the last 30 minutes and disappears before the last 15. Who's our big bad villain of the movie? He's literally on the cover, making it out to be like he's going to be in the entire movie, and he's not. And then Cloud fights him, and then basically the movie ends. So you don't have a huge plot. And let me explain. I did watch the complete version of this. The version here is the PG-13 version. It is an hour and 41 minutes. That sounds like a better length than this because the longer version is 2 hours and 6 minutes. The main changes that had were that a couple characters were voiced by different actors in, I think, the Japanese version, maybe the English version, I don't know. and uh the there was like more violence, but I didn't really notice any. That was partially why I was like, okay, if the apparently the action was better done in this version because it actually had some violence to it. Not really. There's tiny bits of blood at some points. Uh, and apparently it brought in more scenes that like fleshed out the backstories of everything. But again, the story is one of my main issues with this film. It doesn't really feel all that connected to what I remember from Final Fantasy VII, and it just kind of feels cash grabby in a way. It feels like they made up a story just so they could have this film when in reality, to be honest, I think most people would rather have an animated version of Seven's story, which that's kind of what I would want too. I think that would be a lot more effective, and I think you could actually make a pretty good version of that, like an animated version of the story. Um, Maybe not in movie form, more in anime series form, but I still think you could do it. But yeah, the story is a big issue for me. The the freaking the way this film introduces the characters from the games, freaking so basically Yuffie, Barrett, I think Reno, and all of these like just a second. Let me see if I can find this. Uh yeah, but basically Yuffie, Barrett, and I think Reno come out of fucking nowhere. Like characters that were big in the game, like had character to them. They were in a lot of it. I'm pretty sure most of it. Just kind of show up during this like halfway through the movie like monster attacking the city scene, and it feels very like out of nowhere because we haven't had any references to these characters. I think earlier Barrett like called Cloud at one point, like on his phone, his flip phone that he keeps showing, but that's about it. They kind of just come out of fucking nowhere and they're in the fight. They all get a little bit to do, but same with Vincent also. I don't remember him from the game. If he was in the game, maybe he was. I don't know. Don't hold me to that. But uh I just it just feels weird that these characters kind of get ignored in order to focus solely on Cloud when I feel like that would have made it a bit more interesting because the fact that Cloud kind of just doesn't have any issues in any of the fights really, it kind of makes it a bit less interesting. And that's exactly why I don't watch a lot of superhero movies because it's like, oh, just a higher power level. Oh, you do this specific thing to kill the enemy, or you just have no trouble fighting everybody, and there's no suspense or thrills. And that's kind of what I felt here at some points, especially at the end where it's kind of Deus Ex Machina, like, oh, he's losing the fight, and then pulls out the secret weapon or whatever, and then, oh, it's over. I'm not a fan of that type of stuff. Um, but this film also has an issue with pacing in the terms of, or in the way of, there's a couple small action bits at in the first half of the film, but almost all of the action's in the second half, and I think that's a bit of an issue to have like tiny bit in the first half, and then the second half there's like it's basically it's kind of paced like hard boiled in a way where the last half of the movie is this big long set piece in this hospital But in Hard Boiled, John Woo knew how to pace it out so it never got boring. You felt like you were out of breath by the end of the movie, which is a good thing, but he knew how to pace it out so it never got boring or it never felt like you were seeing the same thing over and over. This film has way too much expository dialogue in the first half, and the action is all bunched together in the second half. And you have an extended uh epilogue kinda or extended ending scenes where it's just like, okay, is the movie over? Can the movie be over yet? And this might sound like I hated the movie. I didn't. I didn't at all. But I am a little disappointed in a lot of things. But yeah, like I don't like it when movies put all of the that this kind of reminded me also of Inception, where there are a couple dream sequence type things in the first half of the film, but most of it is dedicated to the last half big stretch where it's the dream within a dream within a dream. And I did have a bit of an issue with that because it had a bit too much happening all at once at the end, and I wish it was kind of like sprinkled out in throughout. And maybe like the last 45 or 30 minutes of the movie is a big long dream instead of the last hour and 12 minutes. But yeah, even then, what did I like about this film? The animation. The animation is still very stunning in many places. Sometimes the lip sync, the lips look a bit weird on certain characters. There's one of the three brother characters, like Sephiroth's brothers or whatever, that their lips look a bit odd. But overall, the animation is pretty gorgeous still. This is 2005. This film is almost 2 years old. The version I saw was a year or two after, but still, the original movie was 2005. Again, 19-year-old movie, and the animation still holds up. It doesn't look cheap, it doesn't look bad, it doesn't look really that outdated. It works for what they're going for. Um, the action scenes, I think, even though in the second half they get a bit too long and a bit too superhero movie-esque, I do still think they're very entertaining. It's well animated action, it's well choreographed within what the characters are doing, and I overall enjoyed it. I can see someone enjoying this film just as a visual spectacle, and that's kind of what I enjoyed it for, even if the plot was kind of bland, especially bland for me. The musical score from Nobuo Uematsu, who's done the scores for a lot of Final Fantasy games and Kingdom Hearts games, I think. Very impressive score here. A lot of songs taken from Final Fantasy VII and remixed, like Aerith's theme, the da 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 da. The Sephiroth theme was really cool to hear again. Um, the one that's basically become a meme, or it's been a meme. Um, the cinematography. I think the cinematography does a good job of feeling like both an animated movie and kind of live action in the way it's shot, where you have kind of a camera shake on certain character bits. Um, and you have some really nice shots, like the one at the beginning where the camera goes all the way down to the ground, and then it's towards these characters running towards the camera. Um, a lot of the camera work that's very dynamic during the action scenes, going around the action without making you forget what's happening at that moment or making it hard to tell what's happening. I like that. It's dynamic. It doesn't um leave you bored most of the time, even though again some of the action scenes got a bit overbearing, but still the cinematography was really great. And well, I guess that's it. Like it's kind of hard to say exactly how I feel about this movie. Again, I think it's decent enough, but that's mostly from the standpoint that there are so many fantastic things and what's kind of a, I guess you could just say it, it's kind of a cash grab. A lot of people love Final Fantasy VII, so they saw Final Fantasy VII on this and bought it. A lot of people love this film. I'm not saying it's a bad film because of that. I'm not saying it's a bad film. It's just one that I think is very dependent on if you wanted a like extension to Final Fantasy VII, which I don't think most people did. Um, I think more people are upset that Final Fantasy VII Remake is split into two games where they're gonna have to end up paying $120 to experience the game that they could just play on a PS1 emulator or something. But like I do enjoy the film to an extent. I think I'll ever watch it again? Probably not. But if you want an anime film, a CG anime film that has like a great spectacle to it, um, and stuff like that, I think you're set with this. I'd probably say don't watch the 2 hour version. Watch the cut down hour and 41-minute version. But again, I still enjoyed this to an extent. But yeah, that was my review of Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. If you've seen the film, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you have any recommendations, put them down there as well. And movie reviewer next door.